2.
At this time, I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order. And we'll first have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States
of America and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you. The just the comment, I am chairing this meeting by distance by Zoom due to a quarantine situation. And the majority of the council is also connected by Zoom. So at this time, I will call on City Clerk Kyle Box to take the roll.
Mayor Burns,
Here.
Craig Schaefer, Steve Meister,
Here.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Here.
John DeCramer,
Here.
Russ Labatt,
Here.
Tim Lozinski.
Here.
And thank you, Kyle. We do have a quorum of the council. We also have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? If not, we'll operate it under that agenda. We'll move to agenda item number 2. This would be to consider the approval of the minutes of the work session that was held on August 18th, 2020. Council does have the minutes of that work session. Are there any corrections?
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Russ. Kyle, will you take the roll? Take the vote?
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Abstain.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Jim Lozinski. Jim Lozinski.
You're on mute, Jim.
You're still on mute, Jim. Give us a thumbs up.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you. The motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 3. This will be consider the approval of the minutes of the work session and the regular meeting held on August 25th, 2020. Once again, with both the work session and the regular session, any corrections to the minutes that the council has received? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve both minutes.
So move.
Motion by John, seconded by Russ. Discussion. Kyle, will you take the vote?
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Jim Lozinski.
Still working on my yes.
Very good. The motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the vacation of a utility easement in Carr Subdivision 1. So we'll have the public hearing on the resolution that would grant the petition, and then following the public hearing, then we will consider the resolution. I'll call on City Engineer, Director of Public Works, Jason Anderson, to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. You can see the drawing attached that we've enclosed in the packet. The blue hatched area is the area being requested for vacation. We received a signed petition from the developer wishing to vacate this easement, and the purpose being they are working on combining and splitting these lots to create wider lots for the development of twin homes or townhomes like you see across the road to the north on Andrew Street. So the developer wishes to mimic the development on the north side of the street, and that has necessitated the movement of this easement. We've reached out to all the utility companies and let them know of our of what's coming, and we've received word from many indicating no concern. MMU does have streetlight conduit and wire in this easement that will need to be relocated, We've made the developer aware that they need to relocate the streetlight wire at their cost. And they also need to provide a new easement for MMU to locate the streetlight wire in. So with that, staff would recommend the vacation, but we would recommend it contingent upon the developer granting MMU another easement and moving the streetlight wire.
Okay, thank you, Jason. We'll open up for public input as part of the public hearing. Is there any input? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, Glenn, were you saying something?
Glenn, you're on, there you go.
No, I don't, not at this point.
Then we'll move to a vote. Kyle, would you take the vote?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Kim Lizinski.
Yes.
The motion does pass. We'll now consider the resolution that would grant the petition to vacate the utility easement. Are there any questions about this resolution? If not, is there a motion?
I would move the resolution.
I'd second it with the caveat, like Jason suggested, that the owner be responsible for allowing the new easement and the cost of moving the conduit.
And that was part of your
Great.
motion also, John?
Yes.
So motion by John, seconded by Steve. Discussion?
That was my question here. So we're approving this resolution. Does the resolution need to have in it wording about the contingency, or is it okay the way it is?
Jason, do you have an opinion on that?
I think it would be okay, but I think I'll defer to our city attorney if he has any concerns. We did this same method, actually, the last time we vacated an easement for this developer in a similar situation. And I think it worked out fine. I think we just maybe delayed recording until we got it taken care of.
Oh, point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I think that the motion will read as we read it with the contingency in it, as will the second. So that'll be part of the record.
thank you. Any other discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Kim Lizinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 5. This is the project Z81, the Merit Center Outfall Project. We have a resolution that would accept the bid and award the contract. Once again, Jason Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Bids were received on September 3rd for this project. We received 6 bids, so it was a really good turnout from bidders. So that was very good, all very competitive bids. This is a project to improve the outlet for the city drainage improvements located out on the north side of town at the Merit Center, around the Merit track. Other drainage improvements drain through these ponds, so it really affects a large area on the north side of town. This is a project that was identified to resolve some of the standing water issues in those dry ponds. They're connected to an inadequate outlet on the northeast side of the track. It's a undersized farm tile, and our connection combined with the farm connections, it's just underserved, and this project frees that up. So it should improve the rural drainage as well as the city drainage. Also attached to this is drainage improvements along the Township Road, as you see in the drawing there, going towards Highway 59. We'll be making ditch improvements there and also lowering the elevation of that ditch, which should clear the way for MnDOT maintenance to do some ditch work along US 59. And that'll hopefully provide some improved drainage over there to help alleviate some concerns that we've received. So we've received 6 bids. The low bid was from Town and Country Excavating of Garvin in the amount of $251,297. This is below the engineer's estimate of $291,000. It's proposed to be funded through the Surface Water Fund, and staff would recommend to award this project.
Thank you, Jason. We'll open up for questions, and one question that I'll start with. We have all the necessary discharge permits.
Yes, I believe we do. We have spoken with the county about the project as well. And I don't see any issues there. We've spoken with our city attorney as well about drainage and the connection. And I think that we're all on the same boat, that we have the right to do this project, and we're carrying forward that way. I would note that this project has a deadline into next year. We placed the project deadline into early July, I believe it was, of next year. And the reason we did that was to ensure that we got a lot of bidders and the best possible numbers. We didn't want to try to cram this into the fall where we might cause high bids, or worse, not enough bidders or no bids. So this has a deadline that can go into next year, and the bidder can start whenever they choose, this fall or next spring.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, just a question for Jason. Did we know that this was going to have to be done when we expanded the track?
This project isn't necessarily related to the Merit Center. You know, the title of the project is a little deceiving. This is, these are outfall ponds right prior to the exit of our system. So this drains Commerce Industrial Park. It drains a large portion of the Sonstacart Industrial Park. It drains a large portion of the old industrial parks around Halber and Huron Road and Highway 59. So this is more a project to improve outlet, because we're tying our system as a city to all of these rural drainage systems that are undersized and overserved, so to speak. So we're helping, we're getting our system to drain properly to the existing ditch system in the Northwest.
Thank you.
Sharon, you have a comment?
I just wanted to add, we do have strong interest from a business along Highway 59. Likely this business has talked to or spoken to several of council members about drainage along Highway 59 and near his business. And so there's great interest and support from this particular business person to move forward. We do know that DOT has some responsibility, if not all the responsibility, along Highway 59, but it will help alleviate some drainage there as well. So I wanted to express that on behalf of this particular business.
Thank you, Sharon. Other input? If not, you have the recommendation to accept the low bid and award the project. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes,
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. That said, Jason, do you have a indication of when this successful contractor will begin? Do you think it'll start this fall?
We believe it'll be next spring.
Okay. Okay. We'll move then to the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda this evening include the wastewater treatment facility improvement project. We have a application for payment to Magni Construction, a payment invoice to American Engineering Testing, and a payment invoice to Bolton and Mink. Also on the consent agenda is consider the approval of the employee vision insurance agreement with IMED that would be effective January 1st of 2021. Consider a resolution calling for a public hearing on the proposed assessments for ice, snow, and weed elimination consider the resolution designating uniform election dates and polling locations, consider the resolution certifying unpaid fire service charges, approve a resolution accepting a surrender of a conditional use permit, and then finally consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member wants removed for purposes of separate discussion?
Number 9, please.
Any other item? If not, is there a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
yes,
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. We move then to agenda item number 9, which is the resolution designating uniform election dates and the polling locations. Jim, I'll turn to you.
I would just like us to look for a different spot than the Red Baron Arena. It's fine this time, but it's a hard place to get to if you do not have a vehicle. And I would like to see future elections and maybe bring that back into town on this side of 23. Because again, if you're walking or biking, you may not go there. I know there's other options of both, but we should try to make this as accessible as possible. And I don't believe the Red Baron Arena is very accessible for elections. So I just want to make that comment. With that, I will make a motion to approve this.
Motion by
Second.
Jim, seconded by Steve. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Steve.
I guess I see it's a little ways out, but to say you can't get there walking or biking, there's bike paths there and there's pedestrian paths that go under 23 that are wide open. So unless there's a all out blizzard, in which case even driving, you're not going to get out there. I don't see an issue with it, although people don't like to walk or drive or ride bikes as much as they should, in my opinion.
Yes, Kyle, for the November 3rd in-person polling, this is something you'll probably take input on and monitor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just a little input. We have been at the Red Baron. This is our first year in 2020. We've been there for 2 elections already, the presidential nomination primary in March and then the August primary in August. So November will be our 3rd time out there already. We have heard nothing but good things, actually moving the location out there to the Red Baron from SMSU RA facility. The judges enjoy it a lot better. City staff enjoy it a lot better just for control of the facility. And voters enjoy it with the parking lot accessibility, getting into the building. Like I said, we're able to have control of the building. You don't have necessarily extra traffic with students having to fight for parking spots, things like that. So it's been a really pleasant experience actually for us to be out there in 2020. But if the council would like us to look at alternative places, more than happy to. That's something I actually do quite often is talk with city staff and with Lyon County at alternative polling locations, not only for permanent polling locations, but for emergency locations. And truthfully, we're limited to what we have. We can make a lot of things work, but for the best experience for the voter, for the election judges, our polling locations now are our best options, in my opinion.
I think Kyle, thank you for that, Kyle. The 2 previous elections were probably lower participation because they were primary elections. The general election is the one that's coming up. So I think it would still be good to, continue to gather input from the voters that are voting at that polling location. And then obviously we're set for this time, but then there'll be input that you and the future council can consider for the next time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's a good point. That's what I was going to bring up is the data will drive the decision of keeping it there or not. So if voter turnout goes up compared to SMSU, knowing that there's a variability with each election, how much voter turnout there is. If it's the same or better than it was at SMSU, then I would say it's stays there. If it's less than SMSU, then we may need to readdress, as Councilman Lozinski would like. So let the data drive let the metrics drive the decision.
Other input? Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote on that motion.
Mayor Burns,
Yes,
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes,
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes,
and the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 13, the 2021 budget request from Marshall Lyon County Library. I assume that Michelle is at the Merit Center, or is she online?
I'm
Online.
online.
Okay, so I will turn to Library Director Michelle Laniger. Michelle.
Hi, thank you for having me today. I'm here at the library, and with me in the room is Luann Anderson, in case you see me talking aside. I'm not talking to myself. You should have the document of for our budget request that lists 2018-19 and our year-to-date for 2020. We'd like to give you an array so you can see where our spending is moving. I will also preface this by saying that just a reminder that the library has to start the budget process fairly early because we have a contractual deadline that the city, the county, and the library all meet to agree on what the ask will be by the end of July. We did push it back a little bit this year, or we were allowed to. It worked out that we didn't, but it does mean that there are a few unknowns in the budget when we go to create this budget. And this year we had a lot of unknowns. We didn't know if we would even be able to have an ask that was equal to this year's budget. We didn't know what the fiscal situation was for the city or the county, and what impact any state deficits would have on your budgets. So you see before you a budget that requests 0% COLA or any other kind of raise for staff. The board agreed that we would do that since it was such a large unknown. There are a few factors in the salary budget. You'll see, even though we've asked for 0%, you'll see an increase in the part-time budget. Those are for step raises for part-time staff. Most of our staff are part-time, and many of them have worked for 2 or 3 years before they see their first step raise. So I wanted to include those step raises. Behind the scenes and the numbers here, also, Luann will be leaving us very sadly. Next year she's retiring. And so in this budget, Luann currently isn't on our health insurance, but we anticipate hiring somebody who likely will at least want single health insurance. So we did add 6 months of health insurance for that. Luann has also agreed to do a very brief phased retirement with para, so she can come in at those pressure points and help us and the new person get over the hump of the number of things that she does. Last but not least, we included a 7% increase for health insurance for our the rest of the staff who are on our health insurance. So if there is greater than that increase, which I know we won't know until later this fall, that may present a tight salary budget. Does anybody have any questions about salaries before I dive into the operating part of the budget? So I just want to quickly reference a couple of items that you will see increases in under administration operating expenses for our van upkeep. And then a little further down is mileage reimbursement. Kind of looking at these two things together. Our van is, I think, 19 years old, soon to be 20. Does have low mileage, but at this point, age is more important than mileage. So you'll see that we are kind of getting dinged a little bit with the age of it. So we have asked for a small increase there. Because of COVID, we were looking at purchasing a new and likely used van, one that would work for us better. We have a passenger van, but we use it mostly for hauling materials around. We decided because of the unknown fiscal situation, we decided to push that off until next year, or possibly the year after that. But because of the age, and it's very unwieldy on any kind of inclement weather, especially in the winter in Minnesota, we did ask for a small increase in mileage, and will unlikely take the van out too much in the winter, and staff will take their own vehicles, which I've talked to them and they've agreed to do for a few months. They feel more comfortable in their own vehicles, so we would be doing mileage reimbursements instead. Under building, you'll see the second line. We've asked to basically double what we've asked before in the repair and maintenance of the building. Our year to date for 2020, you can see, is from June of this year, but through the end of August, our expenditures this year for the building, mostly this year has been geothermal issues. We've already spent about $20,000. Most of you were around when they built this building. It is going to be 9 years old this year, the main part of the building. So we have every year, as you can see, exceeded what we have budgeted for that, and many times have had to pull money out of our reserve fund for that. So that's why there's the $5,000 increase there. And then last but not least, you'll see on the third page toward the middle under tech and equipment, line 2245, we've also added $1,000 there. That is the line that we use to pay for all of our technology and equipment, to not only for the staff to operate, but also for our service for the public. And it's basically our CIP, if you will, right there. So we slowly need to increase that a little bit so we can get into a cycle of purchasing technology before it becomes necessary. In other words, we would like to, especially for the public, replace our computers and our Wi-Fi points about every 3 to 4 years. Slowly increasing that over the next couple of years will allow us to not, again, take money out of our reserve fund to pay for those things. Those are the major pieces. As you can see, overall, we're not asking for a significant amount of money, but it is money we need to operate for 2021. Any questions?
Thank you, Michelle, for your and the board's work on this. We'll open it up for questions.
I have a few questions here. First of all, it looks like, again, you're taking money out of reserves to cover the budget so that your revenues equal your expenditures. I think it's about 10,160.
Yes.
And that's similar to what you had last year.
Yes.
I'm wondering about the books budget. In the past, it's been in the neighborhood of 30,000. And so far this year, 13,000. Yet the budget request is for almost 46,000. Do you feel like the book budget needs to be that large?
Yeah, for a couple of things. So my first couple of years here, because we were focused on getting the building staff to the level that the size of the building is, we didn't focus too much on the operations side or on the public services side. My presentation last year, you may recall, I did specifically talk about the book budget because we hadn't had an increase in the book budget for even before I got here in 2016. The cost of books had gone up somewhat, and by keeping it the same, we weren't keeping up with the rate of the cost. So in fact, the number of materials we could add kept sliding backwards. We were actually losing ground. This year in particular, we've already noticed there has been significant increase, just like everything else during COVID. The cost of materials has gone up significantly from January to what we're already seeing in the pre-publication announcements. For example, adult hardcover nonfiction. In January, we could usually buy something for $27 to $30, and now it's running more like 32 to 35 for the average book. So it's a significant jump. Also, again, keep in mind you're seeing the June 30th. Let's see if I can quickly find here to date. We've actually now spent close to 25,000 of that 45, and about half of the books that would have been published this spring actually got pushed off till this fall, again because of COVID. So we had to save a significant portion of the book budget to expend this fall. Fall is always the big publishing season, so we always spend more money in the fall. But now we're looking at spending close to half the budget because most major authors' books got pushed back until the fall.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Any other questions for Michelle?
Is there anybody who has any questions about what we've been doing during COVID?
Michelle, I think that I've really enjoyed the library services during COVID, with the exception that it's hard for me to get there to pick up my holds. But the hoopla and the Levy, wow, and the RB Digital, thank you so much. That is just, what a blessing, just fantastic. I don't know if you want to tell everybody what those are, but I love them.
Yes, those are our digital library. We also have Canopy, which is a video streaming. We were very lucky to have already put those in place before this all happened. And then we got lucky again in March. The state, through Plum Creek, gave us two significant grants to allow us to buy a number of additional digital items, especially in Levy and RB Digital. So we've spent probably, as part of Plum Creek, we've spent probably an additional $25,000 for materials in those two, because we got state money. And of course, that's what, even though our circulation and our visits are down, our digital is again up. And we had a number of people who right away wanted to get cards because of the digital library, or wanted to pay off some of their fines so they could use their card again. So it has been a real boon.
Thank you, Michelle. I think you may also want to comment on, and you should be commended on the Marshall-Lyon County Library is one of the few libraries that did not close. You had to do a considerable amount of adaptation to be safe, but you kept the doors open. So thank you for that.
We did, and I'm amazed at how many libraries are still in Minnesota and across the country are still doing curbside and are not letting people in their buildings yet. And some anticipate that until the end of the year. I know a few libraries in Minnesota have already figured that they will have less than half of their circulation, and our circulation from last year is only down about 25%. our visits are significantly down, but we're delivering to more people. And if you haven't been by the library recently, through our Friends and Foundation, we've actually added a drive-up window. So that, of course, they come up, they get materials, but they don't physically walk in the door. So it makes sense that, and also, obviously, as Dr. Meister said, using our digital library, you're not walking in the door. So I'm not as concerned that our walk-in traffic is about 50% of what it was last year, because the other data is holding its own.
Any other questions for Michelle?
Mr. Mayor, I would just, as the council rep to the library board, I just want to commend Michelle and Luann and the rest of the staff for the preparation of the budget and for staying open during COVID. I mean, they've adapted, they've changed a lot of things. They're offering delivery, and with Ballatin and Cottonwood remaining closed, they're delivering books to those communities, which I think is very well received. And, you know, they've done a great job underneath difficult circumstances, and probably all of them should be commended for the work they've done during COVID. And just a couple of points on the expense side of the budget sheet, as Michelle made reference to, the van is getting old. We know it's going to have to be replaced. But more, and that is an important issue, but more importantly is that geothermal. We have no idea how long that's going to last. It's like Michelle said, it's going on 9-10 years old. So down the road, we could be faced with a significant expense item on doing something with geothermal. So, and I thank you for Michelle for bringing that to the full council's attention. Thanks, Michelle.
Any other input?
I have a couple questions here. One about the geothermal. So are you looking at alternatives to that as far as the energy costs and savings? And is there any group looking at that as a project in the future that we should be maybe taking up in a few years? You know, what would be the savings if we went to a different source of energy? How much would it cost? And planning ahead, do you have a group or a committee that's working on that?
We do not right now. The board did talk about that, but it was a significant investment. It was encouraged by the county in particular to put in the geothermal. I have learned a lot about how those systems work, but I don't know how you transition from that type of system into a different system. We have opened some conversations with Bisbee, who does service it for us. And their opinion is these are things that have gone down. Two of the major air handler pieces, which were significant cost replacements, happened at the end of last year and into this year. Once those are in place, they feel like it should continue to operate highly efficiently. I think you're right. In a couple of years, especially if it continues to have these kinds of issues and expenditures, it would be worth putting together a committee to do that. One of the things that we were worried about in a geothermal system, you have to check the water every so often, and there's a certain additive that gets put in there that basically keeps the plaque off the pipes so it can continue to have the water run efficiently, especially for the heating and cooling piece of it, but really how the water runs all the way out, basically under our part of our staff parking lot and then back into the building. We were concerned that may have been part of the issue, and for free, they take a test and they sent that away. And in fact, the board doesn't even know this yet because I just got the report back. They thought they may have to put a little bit of additive in it, and they were anticipating that, which would cost a little bit. But then geothermals have to be completely flushed every 10 to 15 years. So they were anticipating in a couple of years, we might have to flush the system, which is a large expense. But our report came back perfectly clean. They were amazed at considering it's 10 years old, that we didn't have to put any additives in it. They said it was like a couple of years old. So I'm hopeful that it has good foundation and underpinnings, and It's just these different pieces that wear out. They said it's not atypical that these compressors and things like that give out after 6, 8, 10 years.
Okay. One last question relates to grants and donations. Would it be something that you could look at as far as donations for the new van, find out what it would cost and see if people would be willing to donate money for that project? It seems like a worthwhile project. And I noticed the donations here in 2019, I believe you had grants and donations of 34,000. And you're projecting, or you're putting in the budget 15,000. Is that an area we can look into closer and try and do more to increase the amount of grants and donations? And that would help us with the taking money from reserves?
Absolutely. So just in library grants in general, like other grants, they don't like they tend not to give you grants for things that they would consider operational. So 10 or 15 years ago, for example, technology libraries were on the leading edge there. So there were a lot of grants there. Because it's now considered just like books and materials, it's operational, it's more difficult to find grants for technology that is not kind of on that leading edge. So for example, we did get grant money from the state for hotspots. So in fact, all across Plum Creek, and our friends helped us also buy some additional hotspots. So there are those kinds of things that you can get grants for. And then once it becomes more common, it's more operational and you're less likely to find those. I do think that there might be, if not grant money, ways that we can maybe with a dealership work on a sponsorship of some kind, because this does drive all over the county. And as you said, it's a great PR piece of it. We were planning on doing that, and then COVID happened. So two things happened. I don't know if this happened in other parts of the grant world, but in the library grant world, it really suddenly shifted to things related to COVID. So things that you could have gotten a grant for, like helping pay for a van, we're not there anymore. And so we lessened how much we thought we might get in for two reasons. The first being, I don't know when those grants will shift back and we can apply for those again. I would hope that next year we actually get more than 15,000, but it just depends on how that shifts back as COVID becomes less of an impact. I think the other reason is we were anticipating that donations may be down a little bit due to people's loss of jobs and expenses. If you've gone to a grocery store recently, you just know it costs a little bit more, just like purchasing our books. So I think we wanted to be fairly conservative there. And so that's what you're seeing. But I completely agree with you. We want to continue to apply for grants, and we've done that quite a bit in our previous 3 years.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think you are muted maybe.
Thank you.
There we
Sorry about that. So thank you, Michelle. And in stepping back to the geothermal HVAC discussion, I think in the past you also had input and counsel from MMU, Marshall Utilities too. So
Right.
any other questions for Michelle? If not, we'll take this into consideration as we develop our total city budget. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
We'll move then to agenda item number 14, the Sounds of Summer community contribution request. I believe in the room is representing the Sounds of Summer committee is Mark Claith. Or not?
Yes, he is.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see the request in front of you for 2021 is $10,000. looking forward, we're planning for the 2022 celebration of the city of Marshall. So we figured that it would be better to come in at $10,000 a time instead of looking at that number of 30,000. I want to talk about the COVID this year with not having the Sounds of Summer. We did wait as long as we possibly could to cancel that event. I will tell you, and Councilman Labatt was there. My son was not happy about us canceling that. But due to the COVID, we thought it would be out of the best interest for the Sounds of Summer that we did not hold that event. The city did put a contribution in for this year of $10,000, which is in the account right now. I did have a conversation with Administrator Hanson, and we were willing to give that $10,000 back to the city. And she said, let's have a discussion about this going into 2022. We did get out of all of our contracts that we had signed with our bands and our vendors that we had in for this year. The unfortunate thing, we will not be able to get Johnny Home back for next year. We have booked another band to take that spot. I'm not sure if Brock is working to get Johnny Home back for 2022, and Councilman Labatt, you might have an insight on that too. So our request is for $10,000 for next year, building forward to 2022 for the event. We're hoping that we can hold the event in 2021 with this COVID thing going through. So you will see that there's a financial statement applied to that. I do want to comment on our balance in that for last year. If it wasn't for the $10,000 rain insurance that we took out last year, you can see our account would have been pretty well the same as it was in the previous years. Due to the season that we had last year with the rain, it was the committee's suggestion that we do purchase the rain insurance. And so we did receive $10,000 for that. So that is probably why you're seeing the upswing of that 10 grand, but that was due to the fact of the insurance. And I believe that insurance policy costs us about $1,900, if I'm correct, Councilman Labatt. So I'm open to any questions if you have. We appreciate the city's continued support on Sounds of Summer. I think it's only gotten bigger. We're looking forward to next year. It is a community event. And I think the public and this community would like to see something nice and positive come out of this COVID thing, looking forward to August. So thank you again for your time. And if there's any questions, I'm willing to answer those.
Thank you, Mark. Open up for questions.
Mark,
Yes.
what is your balance as of today? You have a balance as of December 31st, 2019. That was 8 months ago. What is your balance in your account as of today?
There's actually another $10,000 in there from the city. So in there, of course, there was a small contribution of a local person for $350 that came in for this year's event. So it's actually at about 35,000.
And that 10,000 for this year, you're saying we could just push that to next year as the contribution instead of adding another 10,000?
You can surely do that, Councilman Lozinski. I will tell you that coming into 2022 with the event, we are looking forward to having a substantial contribution coming from the city to help that event go off, because we are partnershiping with the city for the event. These events are not cheap to put on. We've been fortunate to have business donate to that. I can speak for the committee. We are concerned about how the donations are going to be coming in next year due to this COVID. Businesses are not back to 100% of where they should be. And so, again, we are concerned about that too, because it is a driving force from contributions from the local business people.
So Mark, the committee's goal is to build a balance and then utilize that balance then for the 150th celebration of Marshall.
That is correct, Mayor.
Other input, other questions?
Mr. Mayor, in reference to what Mark had said, yeah, this event, is 12 years old, and one of the things that that Mark and I committed to each other when we took this over after the chamber had is that we weren't going to spend any more money than what we took in every year. Some years we spent, close to what we took in. Other years we didn't. But, the biggest thing is that, like Mark said, we depend on our businesses, we depend on the city, but we also depend on a lot of in-kind contributions. We don't know if we can count on all those things next year for sure. I mean, a business that may have given us $1,000 in years past may say, I can't afford to do that. I can only give you 300 or I can only give you 500. So what we want to do is like exactly what he said and what you said is build up the fund for 2022. We do have a band booked for next year. It's not Johnny Holm, but these bands that used to cost us $3,500 now for the same band is costing us $6,500. So we're talking about maybe bringing in for 2022, 2 nights of music versus 1 night of music. So if, let's just say a band costs us $10,000, so that's $20,000 just for bands in 2022 to help celebrate Marshall's 150th. So, and that's part of our rationale is that we're willing to give that $10,000 back that we didn't use this year. But please keep in mind that when 2022 comes around for budget considerations, we're going to come knocking on the door and we're probably going to ask for $20,000 or $25,000 because we want to throw a celebration that Marshall can remember. We constantly have class reunions. We had, I think, 2 class reunions postponed this year. They are both going to next year. And I think one is already, and in fact, we also have a new one. So I believe we have 3 class reunions during Sounds of Summer next year. Those people are coming back to Marshall for a celebration that 12 years ago we didn't have. So keep that in mind. And we want to keep, as our motto, fun, family fun free events. And we put smiles on a lot of kids' faces and a lot of smiles on adult faces when they can hear the music. So thank you for your consideration.
You're muted, Bob.
Yep.
Thanks for telling me. Yes. Any other input?
And I
Mayor,
do
the
agree-
only other comment I'd like to make, Mayor, is that a lot of these community events in this area are not in the black. There's a lot of them in the red, and they are not holding their events due to that purpose. And with Councilman Labatt, we have never overspent what we've had, and we won't. Again, donations coming in is an unknown to us. So I am pretty proud of that committee for maintaining our revenues and our expenditures, and we're still in the black after 12 years. And I can say this, as long as I'm in charge of the checkbook and Russ is on the committee with us, we will never go in the black. Or never go in the red.
I hope.
We're going to red.
Red, excuse
Because
me.
otherwise you just lost my vote, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any other questions or input?
I just want to say, I do agree this is a wonderful event. But as we talk about COVID all the time and how do we got to cut out of the budget, and we have council members say we got to cut cars, we got to cut staff, we got to cut this. And here's a festival that's doubled what they have in savings since 2018. And we're talking about maybe furloughing city employees and beating our tax rate down to 1% or our levy even down to 0%. We need to take that into consideration. I understand we want to have a great event in 2022, and hopefully by then COVID's over and businesses are back in place. But property taxes are also big to businesses. And there's a lot of businesses that would say, I would love to have doubled our revenue in 2 years or our assets. I'm not opposed to the program, but I'm opposed to pushing the $10,000 from last year I'm for pushing the 10,000 from last year to this year because we are struggling with the budget, as it'll come up later in the council meeting. We are trying to get our levy down to 0, and we are trying to keep all of our staff on, and we have to take all this into account. Again, it's a great program. You guys have done a wonderful job with the checkbook, obviously, because your revenue keeps going up. So, and I applaud you for that, but I have to look as a council member, do we make sure we keep employees employed, or do we give $10,000 to a celebration? I think we can do both. And that's why I would recommend pushing the 10,000 from last year to this year and leave it at that and let you keep that 10,000, even though we didn't have Sounds of Summer.
Other input?
I would agree with Jim there with regard to that. And we need to remember that the budget can be amended throughout the year. And if things turn out better than we expect, we can always add items to the budget or delete items from the budget. We are allowed to amend the budget whenever we want to. So I think the conservative thing would be to forego the 10,000 this year.
Any other input? If not, this will be part of our larger budget discussion. So thank you very much, Mark, for joining our meeting.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
We'll move then to agenda item number 15. Consider the resolution approving the changes in the 2021 fee schedule. Annette, do you have this?
Hi, Mayor and Council. This is Carla Drown.
Oh, yes, Carla, go ahead.
The fee schedule is before you for the 2021 year. Changes have been made. The Ways and Means Committee met on August 28th and discussed and are moving this forward for approval at the full council. We do have a couple of staff to answer any questions related to their areas with us this evening.
Very good. Any comments from the Ways and Means Committee?
None at this point. I think, as Carla said, we reviewed it and we approved it to bring it forward to the council.
Okay. Open up for any input from the council.
I have a question on, I was figuring on the fee to the single family home is going up 6.7%, which seems to be a fairly large jump. I know you can say, well, it's only 36 cents. It's still a 6.7% jump on the single family residence. What was the driver behind pushing that one up such a higher percentage than the rest of the fees on the surface water?
I can try to answer that, Councilman, if I may. So the goal with the surface water fund through our rate model and work with finance was to raise have a 1% increase in revenues for next year. So to do that, it's not a 1% increase across the board based on how the fee is calculated. So you're right, it does end up in a 6% increase to residential, but the commercial and industrial, for example, have slightly over a 1% increase. So the short answer is a 36-cent per household increase does keep the commercial and industrial users who pay the bulk of the fees from having such a big increase in fees.
Thank you, Jason. Other questions?
The other question I had on is wastewater. Is the base charge is going up, I don't know, $1.45. And I know it's just not wastewater, it's also MMU. Marshall has extremely high base charges compared to other communities that I have worked in or have homes in. In fact, I would say Marshall's virtually on the top. What is the purpose of not building that into our cost? Or as we keep pushing up these base charges, that does become a detriment as businesses look at coming to Marshall. And I've compared us to Hutchinson, St. Cloud, Buffalo, Duluth, Minnesota, and our base charges seem to be running higher than those communities. And I just think we need to start watching that, because that, again, drives people away when they look at those base charges.
Staff can definitely take note of that, Councilman. I would just remind everyone that we are in the throes of an extremely large and expensive project at the wastewater treatment plant for renovations and improvements. And that does tend to push the rates up. We've been adjusting our rates for the last probably 4 years in preparation of this project as well. So, I don't disagree with you that our rates are high. We get yearly reviews with all the rates in the region that we compare ourselves. So we are aware of where we're at. But what you hope to see is that then Marshall, once we get to these projects like the one we're doing right now, that our rate levels out. And now some of these other communities have projects that kick in and it brings them up. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster, and you would hope that we're on the high end and eventually we fall back down towards the middle. So this stuff happens and it changes over time. But your concern is noted, and it's certainly something that we're always looking at.
Other input?
I would argue, Jason, I would actually shoot for the roller coaster analogy. You want to, if you're going for the high, which I agree with Councilman Lazinski, then you got to get to the low at some point in time too. You don't want to ever go to the middle, otherwise you don't get enough inertia.
Sure,
Okay.
Understood. Some
And
communities
like
have
Jim
a little.
said, you want to draw business here. And if you're always high or middle, we're chasing businesses away. And we want to draw businesses. And I agree, we're in the throes of a very expensive, almost mandatory revamp of our wastewater system. And that needs to be paid for, no question. However, I also would caution staff to make sure that we don't keep inflating prices, because once that project is paid for, let's just keep maintenance going and maybe making a little profit to keep the maintenance up, other than charging for everything and being at the top of the market as far as costs and fees.
We agree, and we concur, Councilman. We had the same conversation with the surface water rates. The model would have suggested a 3% rate increase. We put it down to 1% with the hopes that over the next few years, with some good bids and shuffling of the CIP, that it would sustain us for the same reason. You don't want to get too high, and you don't want to be taking in too much money. And when you look at the fund and the balance over the next 5 years, and you see that you're okay for the first few, you maybe take a more cautious approach. So that's something that we're always looking at too, and also duly noted.
Thank you.
Any other input?
This is Glenn Vierkoller. On our spreadsheet, it shows the 1% increase for 2021 through 2026. So we're trying to keep it at a 1% each year for those 6 years. And as Jim noted, the residential one is going up way more than 6%, or more than 1%. So are we going to keep having those residential increases of around 6% for the next 6 years each year?
Not necessarily. You know, that's something that we can always evaluate. Our residential rate is still fairly competitive in our minds. If we're talking about, are we talking about surface water at this point in time, Councilman?
Well,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
you were back
Yeah.
with the surface water. Was that the 6% one then?
Yep, that was surface water, and that's something that we can evaluate on a year by year basis. But just understanding that if the residential doesn't cover a little bit larger share of the burden, then your business community takes on more of that.
But I mean, if you're getting huge increases in residential every year for the next 6 years, that's a big increase for the residents, and somehow we've got to keep those increases down.
We agree.
other input?
Mr. Mayor, can I add a comment?
Yes.
I wrote an article on surface water fees and wastewater fees. It was probably a year and a half ago, so it's a little dated. But I think they are comparable. We'll go back and look again. One of the things that definitely needs to be considered, two factors. One is the amount of flooding potential that Marshall has and can encounter, and that may equate to higher surface water fees. If you take the city of Moorhead, which has had implications of flooding, their surface water fees are double the rate of the city of Marshall, as an example. And of course, you're going to find cities that have much less. They may not have the same flooding potential. And then for wastewater, the opposite may be true. Our flow of the Redwood River presents the limited flow of the Red River at times during the year presents additional challenges for wastewater that other communities may not have. Most recently, the Red River was probably at its lowest it has been in many, many years this past summer in August. Maybe it's gone up now a little bit with the recent rains we've had in the last 2 weeks. But I do think, you know, we get that rate study, I think annually or maybe every 2 years. It is a really good document to compare, and we can certainly do that again. But I know, again, from a year and a half ago or so, just kind of looking at this, you really have to look at each city on a case-by-case basis and kind of do some further analysis of why a particular rate is what it is. And I do think actual dollars and cents has to be looked at. You can't just look at a percentage. I think you got to look at dollars and cents too. And so anyway, I just wanted to add that in terms of comparisons.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other input? If not, you have the recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee on the 2021 fee schedule. What's the wishes of the entire council?
Make a motion to approve the fee schedule as submitted.
Motion by John. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Glenn. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle, would you take the vote?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
No,
And the motion does pass. Move then to agenda item number 16. This is the bituminous resurfacing on various city streets. We have a change order, the final change order and the acknowledgement of the final pay request to consider. Jason, any detail to add?
No, Mayor, this is the final pay request for our annual mill and overlay project. So we would recommend to approve the final payment so we can close the project.
Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to the vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes,
And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 17 to consider the resolution adopting the preliminary levy for 2021. We've had numerous budget workshop sessions leading up to this point, and the preliminary levy by state statute needs to be adopted prior to the end of September. And then the council can continue to work on the budget, not to exceed the preliminary levy. It can be reduced from that time. With that, I'll turn Sharon Hansen. I'll turn to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We do have included in your packet a resolution, if adopted, would set the preliminary levy. And as the mayor stated, it is a not to exceed levy, with the final levy due towards near the end of December of this year. We did have multiple work sessions. The resulting near the end of the preliminary levy discussion was held on August 18th, where a formal presentation was given on recommendation to adopt a preliminary levy. At that time, we were at 6.4% for a levy increase based on the needs submitted by staff. We originally started out near 10%. Staff did work prior to August 18th to get it down to 6.47. At the August 18th work session, staff did present options to reduce the levy to near 2%. However, there was discussion by council about having some preliminary levy dollars in place due to COVID and due to the uncertainty in certain revenue areas, especially local government aid. We did have in our 2021 budget and levy an increase in local government aid. However, the League of Minnesota Cities has urged caution on local government aid. And for some of us, we have experienced unallotment from the state of Minnesota, who does not issue the final payment for 2020 local government aid until near the end of December as well. So we're a little concerned about that. Therefore, the council did discuss coming forward and directing staff to come forward with a 3.5% preliminary levy increase for 2021. And again, this was due to a variety of factors, and mostly due to the unknown nature of COVID, and then also some of our revenue. I do want to add that the 3.5% increase equates to $246,894 of additional revenue in terms of property tax received. It's not a large amount. And when you look at the total expenditures for 2021 proposed, we are, for the general levy, approximately 13 million. So it's the 246,894 is slightly less than 2% when you compare it with the total expenditures. I don't believe this was included in the slides or the information for tonight, but when we did our presentation on August 18th, we did present to you how this impacts certain property taxes. We didn't update that, but I can tell you in a general nature that a 3.5% levy increase for the average homeowner in 2021 would equate to a $15 increase. And for the average business valuation would equal a $50 increase for 2021 at 3.5% increase. I do want to allow Annette Storm, our Division Director for Admin Services, who her and her staff, including Carla Drown, have done a tremendous amount of work for the 2021 levy and budget, along with other division directors and staff. But I'll pause here and ask Annette Storm if she wanted to add any comments to the preliminary levy documents that were included.
Thank you, Sharon. Can everyone hear me okay?
I can't hear you.
No? Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
Better.
I'll try turning it up here. I had this issue last time too. Am I muted still?
Now you're good.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. I think I just wanted to add that.
You do need to talk
You're
closer to
really
the
close to the microphone.
microphone.
I don't know which one it's coming from. Can you hear me okay?
Now you're great.
There you go.
Okay.
Don't move.
I think I just wanted to add that since this is a preliminary and we do not know health insurance rates, which is a big driving factor in next year's numbers. Due to the COVID, they have requested that October 1st or the beginning of October, they will not be releasing our insurance rates, which is kind of concerning, just because in the past it's always been usually in September. So by the time we present this, it's a little bit more known. So I just wanted to, I think, add that in addition to everything that Sharon had said.
Okay, thank you, Annette. And I would just say thank you to Sharon and Annette and Carla and the division directors and other staff who have all worked really hard to present what they believe would be the most conservative budget while still providing the services that that people expect and the city has provided. With that, let me just open it up for input discussion of the council. Or I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution for the preliminary levy.
Mr.
So
Mayor,
moved.
I just, before we, I think, sorry, Steve, but League of Minnesota Cities put out a brochure and I happened to get a copy of it and said it was dated August 31st. Sharon, I'm sure you've seen this. Says cities report they're experiencing a decrease in revenues and an increase in unexpected expenses associated with the pandemic. A number of cities and local governments report they're feeling the negative financial impacts of the corona pandemic, according to the July survey. Some of the city responses during this was 35% of the cities reported a decrease in property taxes collected from March to June. 45% reported a decrease in fees and charges collected compared to budgeted during the same time period. 60% of the cities decreased non-essential self-defined services during this time. Cities also used hiring freezes and cut staff hours to balance budgets. The same document said, looking ahead to the rest of 2020, it said 50% of the cities expect declines in property tax revenues, 50% expect declines in revenue from fees and charges, and 20% expect declines in state aid, as Sharon just made reference to. Other highlights, the most often cited unanticipated costs of responding to the pandemic included unbudgeted purchases, 85% of cities, overtime costs, 35%, and costs associated with paid leave requirements under the Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act. 18% of cities report that area job losses have hurt the local community. 35% report extreme concern about the local economy. There was another article that I read. It said a reference to the cities. They had increased 4.5% to zero in response to the financial fallout from the COVID pandemic. Some chose to close the funding gap with no levy increase, trimming about 20 million from the proposed budget, tapping some reserve funds, delaying some hiring, and putting some technology and equipment upgrades on hold. And on a positive side, he said, however, he added, by doing some of those things, he said no furloughs or layoffs are being proposed for this year or next. So just to let you know that this was on a League of Minnesota brochure. So I don't think we're alone in facing some difficult decisions coming up. And yeah, we know we have the unknown with the health insurance, and that usually is a big number. But, you know, one of the things there said that we could put off maybe some expenditures. You know, when it looks to buying equipment, do we really need it this year? And again, that's a discussion we can have further on, but I just thought I'd share that with the rest of the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Russ. Just to clarify, and that also points out that there are some real differences in the state, and and some of the issues that some of the urban areas are facing in terms of property tax delinquencies, we are not seeing here. In fact, Lyon County reported an actual increase in property tax collections for the May property taxes. So which really speaks well of the property tax owners in the city and Lyon County. So we have not at this point seen a reduction in the anticipated property tax revenue. In fact, we've seen a slight increase. We continue to see a lower unemployment rate. It's higher than what we would want, but it's certainly lower than the state. We are at just over 4%, where the state unemployment rate is nearly double that. So we need to be a bit cautious, and I respect what the source that you had. But the state isn't. There are some differences in the state, and we need to kind of look at our local situation, and some of the metro situation is not what we're experiencing here. There may be other comments, or Sharon, you may want to clarify anything I said there.
No, I think I agree with everything that's been said. I think we participated in that survey as well. We did respond to that, and a couple things. I know we have an equipment review committee scheduled, I believe. We're going to talk about some of those capital purchases. And also would like to have a work session with council to discuss labor relations as well. I've had the opportunity to speak one-on-one, and Sheila and I have, but it's always good for the council to kind of know some of the implications of labor relations in terms of union contracts and budget reduction related items. So I wanted to add that as well. And we, well, with all this that maybe isn't specific to some of the other cities, we still have the goal of debt reduction. I want to be clear that we've made some strides in that. And part of the 2021 levy does include debt reduction factors as well. So some of the reasons of a levy increase not only deal with just general operations, but it's really looking long-term as well. And if we get to the point of having a near 0%, it's going to just push back further some of our goals in terms of debt reduction and things like that. But again, we presented some information on that, and we can further discuss that into the future as we settle on the final levy near the end of December. So challenging times, and I know it's really difficult for the council when we come forward with this particular item, and especially as we get towards December, it's really tough. It's never fun to look at raising property taxes, but we have to be realistic and be smart about how we need to go about our business and our needed services. And so I appreciate all the feedback and comments.
Other input?
Mayor,
Yes, John?
I believe we had a motion to approve as presented from Councilman Meister. And
True.
I would second that motion.
Motion by Steve, seconded by John for the resolution adopting the preliminary levy. Discussion on that motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
just
Steve?
for the public's knowledge as they're watching this is the preliminary levy. It is not to go above this. And people oftentimes think that this is what we're doing. I assure you that the council will work arduously along with staff to minimize it, given all the constraints and cost increase, and we still have to run the wonderful city that we have.
Any other discussion on the motion?
The only other thing I'd like to comment on that or build on Steve's is the levy did grow by 1.9%. So the tax rate increase on most homeowners is only gonna be at 1.6% because we had a tax rate or 1.9% growth rate. So we are, as a council, yes, we are probably still gonna work this down, but we've worked very hard to get to where it's at now. And we will keep working to bring it down, as Steve said.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to the vote. Kyle?
Is everyone okay with the December 6th is what is currently in the resolution for the TNT meeting? I just wanted to point that out too, in case that date didn't work as it was just put in there.
Everyone understands?
I thought it was December. It was December 8th in the.
Oh, so, excuse me. Yes, Russ, you are correct. December 8th.
Okay. Good clarification. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, Kyle, will you take the vote?
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Len Bearcooler,
No,
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
No,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
Motion does pass. We'll move then to Commission Board Liaison reports from the Southwest Regional Development Commission. As their annual meeting, it'll be by distance this Thursday afternoon. Southwest Regional Development Commission also did host today a discussion of the CARES Act funding and one of the presentation examples that was used was City of Marshall, and myself and Lauren Deitz were able to participate in that, along with the other presentations were by Rock County and Redwood County. So with that, let's move then to, I believe, Steve.
So EDA had a joint Lyon County EDA meeting last Thursday, I believe it was. I did have an pre-existing obligation, so I could not meet that or make that. My other two have not met. The formal EDA meeting is scheduled to meet next week.
Thank you, Steve. I believe Glenn has left the meeting. I believe he has. John?
As mentioned, there was a EDA meeting with Lyon County just to discuss partnering with Lyon County. EDA is continuing to take action on the CARE Grants 2.0 submittals. And we still have another meeting scheduled for Monday, an EDA meeting. Is that correct? Yes. Ways and Means did meet and we acted on that tonight. And MMU has not met since our last meeting.
Okay, Russ?
Library Board has not met. CVB tried to meet, but we couldn't get a quorum together. Police Advisory Board has not met, but I believe Director of Public Safety Jim Marshall has made conditional offers to some police officers that he will be joining on staff, certainly. That's all I have.
And Jim?
Mine did not meet, except for City Hall Committee, which I'll touch base on that. As you can see, City Hall is slowly trudging along. We are having some discussion, or some great discussion, on the wall going up next to the hotel and City Hall. They did come in with a price on what it would cost. Us at the committee did not like that price. So we're doing some revisions. You know, I'll be up front, they're looking at over $500,000 for that. That is not acceptable to us. So we are taking some revisions to remove some stuff out of that wall, change the construction, maybe change the material used on it to keep getting that price down. We did take the advice of the contractors at the time, which I still think is good advice at the end to get rid of that old wall and do it correctly. But like I said, we have another meeting tomorrow at 11. We had a meeting last week on this. Jason, I think he's still here, has been working very hard. Ray is working on this to keep bringing this cost down, to make sure that the city and our tax dollars are used correctly. You know, I know there's a new email I received from Sharon on some credits from what was not done from the demo of the hotel. They came in, you know, with different prices, and we said, well, there should be more in that. And Ray has worked very hard on getting those numbers correct. I believe Jason can maybe touch on that. So there's a lot of work going into City Hall to make sure we are not throwing money away. Like I said, there's gonna be a change order coming that's gonna be a little higher than what we'd like, but we did get a lot of input to tear down the hotel, and it's tied to tearing down the hotel, a good chunk of it. So we have to deal with tearing down that old structure next to our structure and then correcting the problem that was there. It's better to do it now than wait 4 years when we have a new building and tear down the hotel, because I believe those costs would have been substantially higher. And it's unfortunate that that hotel fell into the condition it did, and we all got put into this boat anyway. So I will take, there's a developer in Marshall, used to own a lot of buildings downtown, gave a good analogy to my friend Craig Schaefer, who shared it with me. He says, right now you feel like you're kind of drowning in the middle of the ocean, but you just got to keep swimming and you will get out of it. And he's referring to a remodel that he did in downtown Marshall too. And obviously we can't stop at this point, but we are working diligently to keep those costs down. And we'll have more of that in 2 weeks when it comes to council.
Okay. John, you had a question?
Yeah, I think Jim, just correction on that. I think that meeting is at 11 o'clock on Thursday.
But that could be 11 o'clock Thursday. You're correct.
Okay. Didn't want to lose our chair on that one.
No, 11 o'clock Thursday.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. And thank you to your leadership on the City Hall Building Committee and the Building Committee's work on this. It's been a lot of extra work, so thank you. We'll move then to council member individual items. Steve, let's start on your end.
So I would just like to thank the first responders, the volunteer fire department and North Ambulance. We had a tragedy with that house exploding, and there's a lot of stuff that our first responders get to do that's really not understood or appreciated, and I do appreciate it a great deal. So I just wanted to call them out. They do a fantastic job. They do it professionally. There's a lot of crap that goes on that we as the public don't know. And we appreciate them very much, and we probably don't call them out enough. So I just, for one, appreciate the firefighters, the ambulance, and all the people who work doing that. And that's all.
Okay. Then let's go back over to Jim.
The only thing I don't have a whole lot, but with it getting colder out, I would say to the public, everybody check your CO detectors. So then our EMS doesn't get used as much. So other than that, I have nothing.
Okay, thank you, Jim. John, or excuse me, Russ.
I have nothing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And John.
Nothing, Ted.
Okay, with that, then we'll, the one point I would make add is that I'd ask the city administrator in her report if she would address the recommendation of the League of Minnesota Cities to opt out of the payroll tax deduction, as many cities are doing at this point. So with that, we'll move then to staff reports, and I'll turn to Sharon. Okay, Sharon.
You're muted, Sharon.
Sorry about that. Is that a little bit better?
Much better.
Okay. You'd think we'd have this all down by this time, but we don't. And I forget. So as the mayor mentioned, there is a tax deferral program, and this was issued by President Trump in an executive order on August 8th. And what it allows employers to do on behalf of the employee is to defer the employee share only of Social Security tax, which for the employee, it's 6.2%. For the employer, it's 6.2% as well. So there's an equal match on that. And it would be effective September 1 through December 31st. So a 4-month period with the deferral to be paid back by the employee in 2021. There is certain provisions on this. It is not a forgiveness of the 6.2%. So for the employee, because it is a deferral, not a deduction, they would really see in January through April a doubling of the payroll tax to 12.4%. Our recommendation as a staff is that we would recommend an opt-out, which is allowed by the executive order for employers. We know that the League of Minnesota Cities as an organization has done that as well. We have not heard from other communities. We know the library here in our community has decided to opt out. I will send an email to the entire council regarding this item. So if you have grave disagreement with this, please let us know. But our intention is to opt out of this particular executive order. We do not see this as a benefit to the city or the employee because it is a deferral program. In fact, for the city, if an employee leaves prior to the end of April, the city would be liable for their portion of the Social Security tax. So again, I will send an email related to that. I do want.
Sharon, can I add just one thing to that?
Sure.
To opt out really takes no action by the city because it's, continuation of our current practice. It does take a proactive action by the city to really change the coding of the payroll software to allow that deferral. So as Sharon said, if council members have a really strong opinion on this, it can come back at a future meeting And then it would take a proactive action by the council to do the deferral of the Social Security or payroll tax.
I just want to add on top of that, Bob, I sat with my payroll today, my payroll gal that does my payroll, and I agree with you, Sharon. I think it's a good idea to opt out because it's gonna just stretch our employees. January, February, and Christmas bills come in. They're gonna lose more money out of their check. I mean, I had an extensive conversation with Brenda at Vendorsville Tax, and I agree with you 100%. It'll probably put our employees in a worse position in the winter time than it's going to put them now. So I agree with you 100% on your decision as somebody who also is opting out of it.
Good to know. Well, one other thing, I'll be really brief. I know that I think 4 council members did attend the city-county EDA discussion along with 3 EDA board members. They did have a meeting this morning. It was a selected few that were invited by the county to continue the discussion, which was Lauren Deitz, our EDA director. And then I believe 2 EDA board members attended that. I think there was a direction to the county from the county commissioners, or at least one of the county commissioners, to look at a county EDA formation, which to the benefit of the city, it's pretty prescriptive in Minnesota statutes. And there gives a lot of authority by the city in a way to decide whether or not we want to participate in such arrangement. So we'll do some further discussion on that and share that back with the council. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions for Sharon? If not, Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. I have no specific updates today. Just really briefly, 4th Street's going well. 1st Street hasn't started, and the Legion Pond project is moving along nicely. But if anyone has any questions, I'd answer them.
Any questions for Jason? If not, Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Am I on? Can you hear me?
You are.
Okay. Russ, I forgot to mention this at the last council meeting. The updated agreement between the city and the MAHA board has been out with the MAHA board for about 3 weeks. Have not heard back from them, but it was indicated to me recently that they would be taking it up at their board for discussion in the near future. Secondly, the farm leases, as you're aware, the city has 12 to 15 parcels of property that are leased out for agricultural purposes. This is the last year of a 3-year current farm lease. I have offered to extend those contracts for an additional 3 years at the current prices with the existing tenants. With our social distancing policies and not needing to get together in large groups, it was decided, well, we just thought as staff it was best to offer to extend the leases. I've only heard back from one tenant who is, I think that tenant leases 3 or 4 separate parcels, has signed and returned the lease to extend it for another 3 years at the same farm price. Hopefully we'll have all of them back and can bring those to council for final action. And then I did, changing subjects again, Helena. I did receive a notice or a letter from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture that the investigation regarding the site cleanup, that inspection continues, and it's now into phase 3 of some required inspections. No timetable as to when that'll be cleared for closing. It will be sometime yet into the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Any questions for Dennis?
Thank you, Dennis, for the update on MAHA.
We'll move then to the remaining items on the agenda, which are the administrative briefs, the information items, and the upcoming meetings. Are there any questions on any of those items? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by John to adjourn. Any discussion on the motion? If not, by voice vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Stay safe. Have a pleasant evening.